I know it's Trinity Sunday, and Trinity Sunday is just a mystery. There is love, the lover, and the beloved. We are just called to believe it. So, hope that doesn't quit. I know I kind of worship at the altar of empathy. I don't just dismiss anyone. I believe in empathy with no boundaries. So, what happens when things don't go as we expect? What if they don't go exactly as we have wanted them to be or to go, what we thought we needed them to be? Sometimes I might argue, specifically for our son, but in terms of faith life, that sometimes the real gift isn't in things going our way, but it's what's formed in us as they don't go our way. What I think is quite wonderful about this passage from Romans is that it leads perfectly into this. This is where the Apostle Paul is willing and writing, to a young kind of struggling group of Jesus followers. The church is coming up, it's starting to thrive, maybe, but still kind of stumbling along the way. And it's in the shadows of the oppressive Roman Empire that is kind of lording it over them. And these are people who are trying to hold on, just to hold on to hope in a world that is full of pressure, that's full of persecution, it's full of uncertainty. Expectations may look different than what we thought a life following Jesus would look like in their context. Paul just spent his first 4 chapters of Romans laying out how grace, not following rules or pedigree, is what puts us right with God and in relationship with God. And here in chapter 5, Paul starts describing what life actually looks like for people who have been made right by that grace. People like us, people like you, people like me, people still striving and living in the world where things don't always line up the way we expect them to be or we hoped for them to be. And this is the first thing he says to them. Essentially, he says, it's going to be hard, but even that's not going to be the end of the story. When I think about this, like we live in a world of lots of, toxic things. And in my context, oftentimes I try to be positive, and people say, quit looking at things through rose colored glasses. Yeah. And when I look at Paul here, I don't see him trying to sell, some level of toxic positivity or blind optimism. I actually think he's showing us a path through adversity, through the adversity that forms us, that through suffering, we grow into things like endurance. And as we grow in our endurance, it leads us to develop things like character. Character is often something we don't see when things are going well, but we see this when things are going not as we expected or as we had planned. It's one of my favorite things about the character of God, that the character of God is best displayed in some of the low moments. For certain, in the high moments, but often we see God's character more clearly in the low moments. And that suffering, endurance, and character development ultimately gives us what I think is unending and unwavering and life-changing levels of hope. I go back to my son at one of the games. The game didn't go exactly how he expected or how he wanted. I mean, watching his team lose and lose pretty badly, it didn't go how he expected or wanted, but he got something far richer on the other side of it, which was compassion, connection, and perspective. He continued to cheer them on because they lost, but he also felt. He felt for them, but also he felt good for the team that won. It was actually a really fair game. It was a good game. He said it was one of the best games he ever watched. Both teams were at their best. And the attitude of the winners and the losers was great, which was one thing you always want to see. But when I looked at him in that game, like He never abandoned his love for his team, like his love for the team never left. He even told me, I'm still planning to support them when I go away to college, but what did shift was an expended capacity to celebrate and empathize with others. Well, I saw the same thing with the Richmond girls softball game. A lot of kids, now adults, have their own kids, are still supporting and cheering their high school team. Many years passed when the Richmond team, didn't make it to the finals, but here they were. And those kids that supported, adults now, supported all along, were still there. And of course, this year too. And I wonder, how much we actually try to do that in our life, to, expand our capacity to empathize, to celebrate with people who are on the other side of the aisle from us, or the ones who disagree with us. They don't think or look like us. They don't believe the things that we believe. They don't root for the same teams that we root for. How do we celebrate and empathize with people that maybe we've villainized? I think that is born out of a resilient kind of hope. One that doesn't collapse under the pressure of differences of opinions, doesn't collapse under the pressure of being surrounded by people that feel like they're enemies, but actually grows a bigger heart in the midst of that tension, which I think is exactly what Paul is talking about in this passage, that these things in these tense moments, this sort of shift in expectation in these moments that are unexpected and more tense than we thought, they don't break us, they expand us. They don't cast us to the side, but they help us become the people that God created us to be. People of hope and joy and grace in everywhere that we walk. This is Paul in this moment, in this passage in Romans, talking to people who lost things, control, comfort, really, safety, but still reminding them that hope does not disappoint, and reminding them that as they cling to hope, even if things don't look exactly the way they thought they would look, that they didn't go exactly the way they thought they would go, that God's hope is the common thread that is woven through the experience of not just us individually as followers of Jesus, but as an entire collection of those in the way of Jesus. I think when I look at this story, God is far more invested than we think. I think we often expect that God is only invested in the moments of mountaintops, in the moments of winning, in the moments of success. I go back to that moment with Michael sitting with the senior in the student section. That's not what I think love looks like when it's poured out. When people step out of their comfort zone and out of their space into a moment and story with someone else, to connect through love and grace and empathy. I think if a kid can hold on to and learn that kind of joy that transforms their own understanding of tribalism as much as, he was at the age of 10, how much more important is that for us to understand? That's a part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to be part of God's family, and to believe that God is forming us into something far bigger than ourselves, that often compels us to sit in uncomfortable seats for an opportunity to grow and experience and to be in community, in relationship with people that we never imagined we could. I think of my son's car that day. It was not sitting in the opposite section. We got there late. We were sitting with the opposition team. I would say certainly that, the look on his face was not just shock. It was like, why did you do this to me? But as I walked down from that high level, and out the arena and to the car, his face continued to grow in joy. His memories that he recalled, even days and weeks later, have continued to grow into memories that I think were core ones for him moving forward in other times of adversity. And they were core memories that I think taught him what it means to grow through something awful and adversity, not just a game, but other things that happen in life, and to find endurance in uncomfortable situations. You don't always get what you want. For us, we do this in our own life. Even coming off Palm Sunday in my own church, I think Jesus reminds us that a journey towards the cross is not one where followers expected to go, how they planned it. It didn't go exactly how they thought it was going to look like, but through their disappointment and through their own suffering and through Jesus's suffering and even his death, God was forming a hope that at its core would not quit, a hope that cannot be put to death, a hope that could not be silenced, and a hope that would endure forever in their hearts, minds, souls, in the souls of everyone that would allow it to. So if you're not where you expected to be in your journey, I would say, you're in good company. From first century Christians to now, we have been a people that have not been where we expected to be, whether it's wandering through the wilderness with Moses or being with Paul in the first century of oppressed Christians under Roman rule, or being in the 21st century here in America or abroad. It doesn't always look like what we want it to look like. We're not always sitting where we expected to sit, but in that seat, we are not alone because we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who have sat in the same places where we sit now, that have journeyed the same journey we're on. And God continues to pour out and will continue to pour out that same level of love to form us into something deeper than we could ever imagine possible as a community of faith, as we grow deeper together. And the church says, Amen.